Hey everybody, thanks for joining us. This is John Frederick from truthstatic.com and the Ecclesia and Ethics Conference. It's an online biblical studies and theology conference through the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. The conference is completely online, and it's only a $10 or a £7 donation to a charity of one of the three charities that we have chosen to register for the conference. So we invite you, if you're an individual, a group, to register to join us, or even to submit a paper, an abstract, to present at the conference at ecclesiaethics.com. We've been interviewing some of our main speakers lately, and today we are really lucky to have Dr. Mariam Kamell from Regent College in Vancouver. She is the co-author with Craig Blomberg of the exegetical commentary on the New Testament for the Epistle of James. And thanks, Mariam, for being with us today.
My pleasure.
All right. Well, we've been asking different questions to sort of some of our different main speakers, and I know that you've done work on many things, but James was, I think, your dissertation, research, and clearly you wrote the commentary on James. So I wonder, what do you see as the role of the church in the community for the Epistle of James, but for the whole New Testament, for moral formation and transformation?
Yeah, it's a great question. In James, what's often not necessarily highlighted as people talk through James is that the whole of the epistle works out in the community. So the whole of the epistle is working out in the community. There's a lot of talk through the epistle of my brothers and sisters, or my dear brothers. James uses that phrase all the time, my dear brothers and sisters, to talk to people who are in community and explain to them what it means to live in community and to work out this faith together. And so, for instance, in chapter 2, the whole faith and works segment that is possibly rather infamous, starts with the position of if a brother or sister is hungry, and so it's working out within the congregation, within the community. And the point is, if you can't even care for your own, how much worse will it get outside of your community? You start with the community, and you practice these disciplines of caring for the ones that God consistently through all of Scripture talks about caring for, all the way through, from the beginning through the prophets. It's, look at the poor, you're oppressing them, what's wrong with you? This is all very much part of God's heart, and in James it's, if you can't do it in your community, you're really going to fail overall. So there's a lot of that shaping how we live in community shapes how we will live in the world, I think. Yeah, that's the starting answer.
That's great, and I mean, some of this is the stuff that we'll be wrestling with together as a conference, as a group, in a community, even though it's a virtual community, I guess. But
right. Actually, I would add too. Part of why I wanted to pick, I've chosen James 4 to work through for the paper for the conference, and part of that is because that has a lot to do with repentance and humility before God and our relationship in community with God as well. So it's trying to play out how does that moral transformation actually work in the community for shaping who we're to be, how we're to be. So that's part of why I want to explore James 4 a little bit more and see how that plays out for shaping people.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, I mean, I'm really looking forward to that. And to, the interesting thing about this conference is it's sort of a fusion, and we've been doing this a lot at St. Andrews recently, and I think you were at the Galatians conference.
Yep,
were you not?
I was.
Of sort of systematic theology, historical theology, and biblical studies, sort of smushing them all together in a conference where in the past maybe those have been sort of separated in some sense, in some contexts. And also this third component, namely the church, and bringing those all to dwell together. And it seems to me that there's something really good about that. There's a sense that we definitely need each other and shape each other and sort of should be working together. And so we're hoping that this medium of online meeting would be a unique way to sort of approach that. We've got an affiliate that has just joined us, a theological institute in Korea, that's going to be presenting papers from Korea, and also we're working with people from all over the world that are submitting abstracts. We've got one from Costa Rica that just came in, and Taiwan, and we're all going to try and get our time zones so that no one's presenting Yeah, it's really tough. So the folks in Korea are
conference ongoing.
Yeah, right. Well, they all will be videoed. So if you're watching this and you're wondering, oh, I only get to see half the conference, or I'll miss Mariam's paper because I live in Taiwan or I live in somewhere in Europe, that's okay, because they'll all be available through the publisher's website after the fact, once we edit it. Great. Another question I had was, the church has, in some circles, skipped over the Epistle of James and tended to focus more on this guy called Paul. What do you think James has to say to the church today that might complement that sort of Pauline emphasis, or in some of the other circles, a gospel emphasis, but in the Protestant world, definitely a Pauline emphasis? What can James add to complement that for us today?
Yeah, well, it's always interesting when I say that I study James for a living, because almost always in the church I hear people say one of two things. Either James is one of their favorite books, or they hate James because he's so bossy. So there's kind of these two ways of reading James in the church, and then it just, in the academy, tends to just get completely neglected, partially because there's just 5 chapters to the epistle, whereas with Paul you at least have a whole corpus to work with. But partly because it seems simple. It's a wisdom text. It's kind of guiding how we live, and so it doesn't have some of maybe the theological complexity that we're used to asking of it, except that it really does. There's a deep undergirding in the grace of God in working redemption for people that it's the foundation for the epistle. It's the foundation for why we then do these things. And what James is then concerned about is, if you've received this grace, what is the implication? If you've received the new covenant, what is the implication? And so he's working out, what does it mean to be a Christian? And at that point, I think the question is vital for the church, the academy, for all of us who claim to be endeavoring in this Christian life thing to work together to figure out, yes, there's other questions to be asked and all these sorts of deep theological questions maybe, but really, what does it mean to be a Christian? And I think James speaks into that. And I think he's very complimentary to Paul. I've been working on from the Galatians conference, a paper on Galatians and Paul, and they seem to have a very similar view of, okay, you're in now, let's see what this means. So I don't think it's actually a contrast, but it's been posed as a contrast for so long that we hear it that way.
Well, I agree. And I mean, there's so much there. It's been put forth before, or perceived maybe by some, as a contrast between, almost in some circles, an antinomian religion of Paul, where you get saved and then you just relax because the Spirit's going to make you holy.
Exactly.
Or it doesn't matter if you're holy, because Jesus rules and you stink. And
exactly. That's all you need to know.
But James, on the other hand, is all into wisdom, it just sounds so Catholic to people, which is a compliment to me when you realize what the true meaning of the word Catholic means. Universal vision for the church, and eschatology, and the whole vision of the New Testament, and not to mention morality as part of that. But yeah, I mean, so I'm really excited to have you bring James in here. We started off with, I guess, somewhat of a Pauline focus, although I guess Professor Wright is also kind of a gospel specialist.
Right.
And I said, you got to get more people involved to get this
What has been interesting, the more I've been working in the Catholic epistles, the more I see them all as, they're all founded in grace. They're all rooted in the work of Christ at the cross, but they're all much more interested in this. So what do we do? If God's done all this, it's just much more the question of, how do you live in this messy world? And they're interfacing very practically with suffering, or with poverty, or with the state of the world, and that's really where they're intersecting. And so that's a lot of the times the questions they're asking and answering. So I think they have huge relevance to the church today, all over the world.
Totally. Oh, that's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to that. And a last question, and by the way, thanks for spending time coming on to webinar and hanging out kind of virtually. You're in Canada, right?
Yes.
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm in Scotland. It is one of those Scottish days, and Mariam, you'd know this, when in 2010 we had this almost all year, all winter where it's just rainy, slushy snow stuff.
Yes.
And none of us have cars out here. We don't need them if you live in St. Andrews. You can walk around the whole town in 10 minutes.
Exactly.
So it's just one of those days today. But I don't know, it's not too bad.
If it helps at all, Vancouver's also quite gray today. I moved from gray to gray when I left St. Andrews to come to Vancouver. So
nice switch. Yeah. Well, if you're in the same time zone, I guess, right now at least, as in California.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference there in weather, but
very
same
much
time. So here's the last question I've been asking. We just had an interview with N.T. Wright, and I asked him the same question, and I actually was talking to Nijay Gupta last night about the same question, and that is, what do you think the role is, or the relationship should be between the church and the academy? And what do you think Ecclesia and Ethics, a type of a conference like this, would have to offer in terms of praxis of that approach?
That's a big part of my passion for how I hope to do my career. That's the wrong wording, but something along those lines.
Sure.
In terms of my feeling is the academy should be in service to the church. We should be helping clarify, explain, expand, and bring more depth to the understanding of people who can't make it a living to study the Bible. They're out in the world, but we should be in service to them so that they can live as Christians more effectively as better witnesses for the truth of the gospel and the transforming power of God's grace because of what we give them, the tools we give them, the knowledge we serve. And so I view the academy as in service to the church. And so there's then a responsibility to the work that I do, that we all do, to not just get so caught into intellectual, abstract conversations, which are fun and good and necessary sometimes, but not get so lost there that we actually just confuse people and leave them wondering what they believe, much less if they should believe. I think we have a bit of responsibility in how we go about our scholarship to not just muddy waters for the sake of intellectual curiosity. Where things need to be challenged and pushed, yes, we should do that for the sake of the truth, but it's for the sake of the truth in the service of the church, of God's people. So that's really the direction I see that relationship. So I'm thrilled by this conference in that there's people I know who are thinking of signing up who will never be in graduate school for theological studies, but are interested, and the depth of the diversity of people who are speaking at this conference just, I think, really speaks to the desire to get all of us in a room and say, all right, so what are the implications of this, and how do we work this thing out in the church and in the academy? And so there's a draw and a desire for comprehension across all sorts of people. So I'm very excited by that.
Wow, yeah. I mean, I think you're on the same page with a lot of us here that are putting on the conference, and it's just good to be able to have, through the technology, the opportunity to just do this together. And what we really desire for the conference is, as people from all these different spheres come in, to make the conference itself sort of an incarnation of the gospel, sort of an act of worship in the world. And so this year we've chosen some charities, Bomb 18 Challenge and Shane Claiborne's Simple Way, and then World Vision for a broader humanitarian Christian effort. And the sky's the limit on what we can do in future years with that. But it just seems to me that when the task of theology and the worship of the church come together to serve one another and grow from one another and learn from one another, and that itself becomes an act of worship and mission and service, and to use Michael Gorman's word, cruciform sort of existence in the world. It's just a good. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to do that. Like you said, such a diverse group and such a global possibility. So,
right, and to do this way allows for people from all over the world to participate that the budget to fly to St. Andrews would prohibit, or the budget to actually be present, and then the budget from St. Andrews' side of hosting that many people, and where would they put, this enables a much broader swath of people to actually participate, both as speakers and as audience people to be part of this.
We see it as is a really complementary new paradigm to go alongside with sort of the local manifestations, like live conferences.
Right, right.
So I think that the technology's there. I think that the desire to gather is there. And so, yeah, we're just really glad to have you be a part of it and to gather with everybody on May 18th and May 25th. Yeah. And as Mariam and myself were just saying, everybody's invited. That includes actually not just individuals, but churches. If you have a big screen in your church and you wanted to just take a laptop, sign on, and then get a bunch of people together, you can actually sign up as a group. It's free to sign up as a group. And then you could just collect the donations, and you could actually allocate those donations to a local indigenous missional charity associated with your church or in your local community. So the kind of creative possibility to see where this might lead you if you're watching, we just invite you to do that, to get creative with it, and to participate in that way too. So again, Mariam, thank you so much for spending time with us. We look forward to hearing your paper and gathering with everybody on.
I'm looking forward to it.